welcome everybody back to Acting with an Amateur. I'm the amateur, and I guess I'm the acting. The second episode will be another quick topic just to cover. Third one, I'm already letting you know. That'll be when I react to some stuff, and there's gonna be some MCU acting. I'll have Pauli compile some stuff, so I won't know what to expect. So I can go in being like, oh, which scene is this gonna be, and so forth. Anyway, so for this episode, I want to talk a little bit about acting tips and whatever. I know this sounds kind of stupid, but again, the title, I've already explained enough. Acting, amateur. I am no professional. Please, I don't ever have to say it again. Hopefully, although I'm sure I will. What I think is interesting about acting is obviously the ability to be something or someone else. That's the fun about it. That's what's intriguing. Now, bear in mind with me, it's just as fun to be yourself as well. Because you can play something that is just you. It's just in this scenario, which you could argue isn't really you. You need to know limitations when it comes to your acting. I think that's important to know. Don't jump into a role that's completely nothing like you've ever done before in your life or to yourself, especially not off the bat. Don't go from assuming you're a normal person to a full-blown psychopath. Now, obviously, you don't have to be a psychopath to play the role of a psychopath. That's not what I'm saying, but it is a big of a shift. It's hard to play different mindsets. Imagine playing something like a molester or something like that. That's heavy thinking and thinking that you don't have as a person. What gives an actor strength in their portrayal is when they can put themselves in the mindsets of the character, in my personal opinion. Again, this I suppose comes from me speaking. So I guess hopefully let's hope I never play a molester. It really helps to see it from that character's point of view as much as you possibly can, but do realize that this isn't real because it's very easy to fall down a rabbit hole, and this sounds a lot like method acting, right? I've probably only worked with one person that really kind of maybe methods. That's a friend of ours, Sasha. A little bit, our friend Navid as well. I do it in a half-Z kind of thing, where I'll spend time practicing the character on my own, which obviously you should always do, and I'll try to get very heavy into the character or start putting myself in a mindset. For example, if I'm gonna play a character like Eric from the Clank series, I write hate mail to myself, basically. I sit down and write stuff about myself that I think is horrible and things like that to get into this depressive, sad, mopey kind of mood. I constantly think negative thoughts and attitude. I try to listen to music that's corresponding to the character and the way the character vibes and feels, because I think that'll help the overall portrayal. It's important to know kind of what you're doing and dealing with, right? Because it's a great way to focus in on what you want from a character, and I think you will really vibe that out of you, because if that's the mindset you're in, there is a bigger likelihood, a bigger chance you're going to portray that. Now obviously that could be I'm not saying push it to the point where it's destructive in your life. Don't be an asshole to your family just because you're going to play an asshole. Don't just insult people or take it out of there. The way I do it is I'll be walking and I'll just be very stern and being very focused in the way I walk and think about myself, the world around me, the music I'm listening to, as I've said. So that's advice and tips I have. This doesn't mean I consider this healthy by any means. I can see how this could be very destructive, and especially if you don't know yourself. And you're the kind of person that knows you have a hard time with things like this. This is not what I would call necessarily advice. But this is more to give you a perspective of maybe thinking outside the box you haven't thought about. Maybe all you think about acting is, oh, I'll show up on the day, I'll learn my lines, I'll do the thing. And that's great. If you do that, it works for you and you do it great, then huzzah. But don't be afraid to take it the next step further and go home and do stuff like writing. Even if not necessarily about yourself, about your character. Start thinking of scenarios in your life and put the character in the position and think, how would that person react to this? Even if it's just your life and your situation. Because it's just interesting to think. I think it makes you connect to the character and grow a bond with them sooner, faster. Maybe a bond you never really had with the character now you maybe develop just because you're thinking how they could be thinking. That doesn't mean you act or behave or are them, but just it's an interesting mental experiment to be dealing with. You'll find yourself doing it in your daily life. You'll be, I don't know, maybe you're doing your taxes, or maybe you're walking your dog or petting your cat, and you're thinking, how would this character pet the cat, or how would this character walk the dog? Would that be any different? And I don't know, I think it could be interesting. I think you'll develop these small things about it. And small things are a very interesting topic, because I think small things are very important to acting. Small things, right? What I mean by that is, is don't you often in a performance see something an actor is doing, not necessarily saying or looking, but sometimes with his hands or body movement that you notice. You're like, oh, I like that little detail. I think that kind of stuff comes from thinking and acting like the character, because you'll be trying to not act like yourself, so therefore you'll say, oh, what if they have like a tick, or what if they do this? And of course, this could be distracting if it's overdone or whatever, but obviously you're just thinking outside the box to add something to the character to make it seem obvious that it's not like you. You don't chew with your mouth open, you don't scratch your face, you don't, constantly adjust your hair or look at your glasses, or, but in a character that is maybe similar to you, or in a character that's in a tense moment or whatever, instead of just having stern face, you could have him adjust his hair, or you could just look at the world around you, and he pauses, he thinks. I like doing that a lot in acting. I like to have moments when I pause. It's a great trick to have a moment to like go over the lines in your head, but also have the moment of breathing for the character, and I think it can help a scene. For example, I think that's a really great trick I learned. I think the most obvious one, or at least the one I know I remember doing, is for the interrogation scene in Clank's Clank Legacy, when I'm talking to Clank. In that scene, there's moments where I pause, and I knew it's good time to pause because the scene could use a second of breathing, and the character could use a second to think, but also it gave me time to think, what have I said and what's left to say? And I think in the beginning the scene starts off a bit rough, but like at the rest of it, I think overall actually works out better than I remember it. When I see it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I remember it. I think that's a really good example of doing something like that, or from me, I suppose, not in general in the world. That is a good example, just from my own acting. Yeah, so I would say something like that is useful. Body language, movement, the way you do things like this. The most obvious stuff comes into doing something like accents. I've only really done accents in the Cold Wars movie. I do a French accent kind of thing there. It's difficult because you don't want it to seem fake or forced, because that's when it ruins it. Like, you're like, oh, that's just... if it's done for comedical effect, then it's different, obviously. But if it's clearly not intended to be for that, you're like, oh, that's a shame.
Wafer of the day special is truffles with mushrooms with the finest water from Valladolid. Yeah,
accents is like something you think, oh, that's easy. I'll go for a Texan accent for the next picture. I'll give it something different. And that can help in the context of where maybe it's a short scene or a small piece. You think that'll help. Just like the Francois piece. I was like, oh, I'm gonna play a French waiter. Okay, I'll just do a French accent. And it's such a small little role. It'll help it stand out a bit more than not at all. And I can give it some more personality than maybe it wouldn't have had, because what the fuck are you doing with giving a few lines of hello, what's your special, right? You could do funny faces and be whatever, especially if that's the intention, but you can add a bit more flair to it like that. Another good example of me, I think, kind of doing an accent is when I played Commander Adams for our friends at Fox Toy Studios. It was supposed to be like a bit like a 70s, 80s vibe. So I thought, I'm going to go for one of these kind of accents. I don't even remember, honestly. I had it on the spot because I've been practicing, but let me see. Commander Adams, something of the sort.
How long has the MI6 known?
Quite a while, Joffrey. Why did you do it?
Why do you think I did it, George?
Money?
It just felt like giving him a little bit more something, since I don't sound British. British is hard to fake. I thought, oh, let's give him like a bit of overly like New Yorky, old-timey gangster voice, just because, I don't know, it just spices him up a little bit. Like, it just gives him something more than just, So that's when, like, I think an accent can come in quite handy if you don't already know what you're doing. Like, again, don't ever do it. Just, if you don't really know what you're doing, like, small little itty-bitty pieces is when that could be fun and good, because you don't really think about it. Unless it's, like, completely goddamn awful, in which case even that small little segment could ruin it. So it's a difficult thing. Ultimately, you have to find your own style and see what you like and what you don't like. I think that by just thinking and practicing small movements, ideas, discussion, dialect, all this stuff can come to overall enrich your acting. Because it can help on the spot. Obviously, you can have a director or a thing that just tells you what they want and how they want it, and you're going to have to do the best to do that. And if you can't, you're going to have to, figure it out. Discuss, say, I cannot do this, but I can maybe do this. It's important. It's important to think outside of it, because you're not really playing you. You're playing a different you, but remember, you are still you, though. You still have limitations, and the idea of the character I do is, I don't know. Maybe better actors, they just blend in. They can be anyone, whomever, and that's fantastic. There are people like Gary Oldman, I think, is one of those people, like really blends into like a character or like a role. You go, You know, there's actors like that, and I think all of these small pieces build up to eventually being able to do something like that, being able to build up to become something different than what you are, because you've tweaked and changed enough that even though it's obviously you there, you recognize the face, you know who that is, but it's not you anymore, because all of those adjustments and changes build up. And this is, again, discussing about small acting tricks in the sense of how you behave and how you act and how you discuss, and things like that give more personality to a character than you thought you could by just your acting. You're emotional in your deliveries. Emotion and delivery can be fantastic, but it also helps to just have these small, like, itty-bitty things in there. Or I find it to be interesting. I always find myself pointing it out, or probably something, be like, oh, look, he did a little thing there. I like that. You know, it's I think one of the most exemplary characters to do that is something like Jack Sparrow. He's always so, like, moving and doing things. Like, it keeps your focus on him. Although the character is a bit of a one-note, like, drunk to me a lot of the times. Like, the way he acts and moves, like, I can't help but be interested. What's the buffoon gonna do next, you know? I am intrigued. And it's also a buffoon with a fake aura of a buffoon. He's not, of course, an idiot. He plays it off as being an idiot. Which, to some degree, he is. But also, he's smart enough to know to play it out to his advantage, right? Well, now we're getting to character study. The movements, it helps him. It helps the scene, and it helps push it forward, right? How he lifts his lip a little more like this when he talks, instead of just talking, right? Johnny Depp could have just talked like this, but instead he does a little bit more lip, where he, like, lifts the corner of his mouth and you see a bit more teeth, or he'll move his hands. It helps sell the character. I think that's pretty good for this episode. Wow, I don't know, Brooklyn thing. I think that's just some stuff I had on, again, acting with an amateur. Those are just some itty-bitty tips I have. Next episode, I'll watch some MCU acting and stuff that I won't know what it is. I'll just see a Brad. I'll obviously seen it all, because yay, Marvel. But it'll be nice to watch the scene and be like, oh, I like this because of this, or oh, I like this because of that, or I don't like this because of that. Alright, well, that was acting for an amateur. Second part, tips, tricks. Hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. If you're not, then, what do you want from me? It's called acting for an amateur. It's like... Bye-bye, everyone.
Just make part 6. I'm begging them.
What you're talking about? I don't speak good English.
Pee in the butt.
Alright,
we're done recording here, so if y'all could action, that would be great.
Yes. If y'all could action. You say action and I'm ready.
Gold.
Okay, Vol does it now.
Action.